Hi, good morning. I'm Colin Hung, CMO and editor at healthcarescene.com. We're a network of blog sites that we've been around for 12 years. We have 12,000 blog posts, and I'm here today, and I'm very excited to be interviewing Vijay, my friend, from PointClickCare. Today we're going to talk about some of the interesting things they're doing in long-term care and post-acute care, an area that I don't think is getting a lot of attention. So Vijay, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Colin. Excited to be talking to you, excited to be here and share our story.
Great, I'm looking forward to it. So Vijay, just very quickly, give us your title, what you do.
Yep, so I'm Director of Product Management for PointClickCare. So my responsibility areas kind of include both analytics and data, but really about how we kind of bridge the gap across the care coordination solution, right? So part of our mission is how do we help our LTPAC providers drive their relationships across the continuum and into the systems, and that's my job, amongst other things.
Amongst all the other things you do, right?
Right, yeah, that's the day job.
So Vijay, you guys have come to HIMSS, it's your first time, but you've had a couple of pretty big announcements that you've made here at the show. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's do that. So maybe a little background just about PointClickCare to kind of put the context around the announcement. So PointClickCare is the largest long-term post-acute care provider in the United States. We have over 60% market share of all skilled nursing facilities, and we also have EHRs for the whole continuum, being senior living, home care, as well as skilled nursing facilities. So really our mission there, as we look at that sort of market size, we think we're in the absolute most unique position to kind of really bridge the gap, right? I mean, so in some markets we have as much as, if you look at a hospital market or a state, as much as 75-80% market share, and we want to kind of leverage that. So the challenge is for our post-acute customers, they say, is they're being asked a million different ways to share data, right? Whether it be via paper or fax or however. Right. So we're trying to kind of bridge that gap, and we realize there's multiple ways to do that. So this week we made a couple of really fun announcements. First one being we're partnering with a company called Redox. Redox Engine being what we think is sort of the most innovative kind of integrator engine to kind of connect the health systems, whether they're using sort of one of the large EHR vendors or something else. And we hope that kind of eliminates some of the barriers we see sometimes when it says, how do you connect PointClickCare into your Epic system or whatever. So we think Redox kind of immediately opens up the floodgates to allow us to do that. The second one is today we actually introduced our developer platform, and so something really unique to the space. So in addition to being the largest provider, we have the largest partner network in long-term post-acute care, and so we need to kind of free the data, create an API platform that third-party vendors can kind of go through and get access to that information. And then lastly, what we're really most excited about is we announced a partnership with Saleforce and their Health Cloud application.
Oh, wow.
And so that's really important for us because we see it as, as the largest sort of LTPAC cloud provider. Can we connect to the health cloud? And so what that does is for systems who are using the power of Health Cloud in that platform, we can kind of connect to give, they talk a lot about the 360-degree view of a patient. We don't think that's complete without the long-term care side of it. So yeah, so it's exciting.
That's a lot of news into it.
I got it all out.
Now, why are these partnerships so important for PointClickCare?
Sure. So I think it starts with with who our customers serve and the aging population. It's really personal. I share a story about my grandmother a lot too, and so why I'm here. My grandmother had a stroke, went to the hospital, had to leave home and get admitted into a skilled nursing facility, and 2 days later had to go back because she never got her blood pressure meds. It wasn't because they weren't caring, they weren't the best provider. It was because a fax got lost on the transition and it came a day late and no one knew about it. That's part of our mission to solve that. It's personal, we all connect to it. And we also realize we can't do it alone. So it's about liberating the data, use partners to kind of get access to that, get the right data to the right place at the right time. So my grandma's story doesn't happen anymore, right? And it's too important not to change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. It's always great to have that personal connection, that personal impetus for what we do. So why is PointClickCare the right partner for these guys? What are you guys bringing to the table?
I think that answer is directly about the fact that we have the largest percentage of the market there is today. So, give you an example, we manage over 1.1 million active residents in our system at any one time. Last year, 2.2 million admissions went through the PointClickCare walls. And so if you look at by city or by hospital share, I mean, you know, what we say is why try to connect with each individual vendor? Let's connect one. We want to power that cloud and use that to go through. And so what happens too much is we're talking to health, or our customers are talking to health systems, or we are. They still think long-term post-acute care is sort of in paper and in the Stone Ages. Yeah, right? Yeah, they're clipping things away. And that's just not true, right? I mean, I think, so we talked a lot about sort of the breadth of our product, but the depth is important too. So as an example there, I think we're averaging more than 500 million meds every month pass through PointClickCare. So that, you know, the breadth being the size, the depth being what we're doing, for the sickest, most important percentage of the population, we think that's why it's important.
So you mentioned integration being an important aspect of what you're doing and kind of the push you're making. You talked about obviously working with third-party vendors in that new marketplace and that new developer platform you guys have created. You know, talk to me about why it's important that this integration happens with long-term care, post-acute care organizations.
Yeah, it's an extremely important part of the health continuum. But I think what we talk about a lot is really this, what we call the silver tsunami, right? So it's as the baby boomers come up, you know, the growth of that population. We're in a little bit of a lull right now, but in 2 to 3 years, you're going to start to see that age group between 80 and 84 really start to spike. And then if you kind of overlay that with where you know the health expenditure is going to go, it's not one-to-one. And so something has to come and solve that challenge, and that's where technology and innovation come in.
Can you give me an example of maybe somewhere where you've done this integration and it's made a sort of a difference?
Yeah, great. So we have a partner we're working with in central Pennsylvania. So I'll give you a little case study there. So we have about a 70% market share in central PA, and hospitals working with some of our really strong clients. And so the hospital starts looking at going, we're going to narrow our network down, which is a big threat to the post-acute care providers. So to give you a sense that, you know, maybe they went from 25 SNFs they're going to discharge to into 10. And so the challenge we see there is that an arbitrary number? How does that work? If you're not in that 10, how do you do that? And so we want to really challenge to say it's not about narrowing networks, it's about high-performing networks. And so with that partner, we looked at, you know, how do we help identify where the biggest parts are? And the first one being on transition. How does that data no longer be on paper? How do we get that data real-time and actionable? And look at things like meds. So if you look at meds, there's some studies. This partner actually found that about 75% of their readmissions that happened in the first 3 days were simply related to data errors and not getting it in the job. So we're starting there. Let's see if we can knock that out and make a difference.
And so, is that sort of been your biggest success at this organization?
Yeah.
Is it sort of the med reconciliation and catching up the errors?
I think that's the first part, but we don't have to wait just for that. You know, that's the holy grail. We get the med rec, we solve all. You know, let's just make sure we understand. One of the challenges is just understanding as a health system case manager, where is my patient? I mean, we don't want to. Can't boil the ocean. You know, the where is my patient is something that is just oftentimes a case manager has to spend multiple hours just making phone calls, tracking them down. And so with our network, we can quickly say, hey, where is the patient? How are they at? Are they still in a SNF? Are they in home care? Did they go home? And allow them to monitor that way. Kind of that true picture of the episode.
I got to tell you, BJ, I've been coming to HIMSS for years. This is actually my 12th HIMSS. And long-term care, post-acute care has not traditionally been a hot topic here at the show. In fact, there's hardly been any vendors. Why do you think it's time that long-term care and post-acute care get some attention?
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's too important that it can't keep being ignored. And I think it's tied exactly to that same silver tsunami we talked about. I think if you look at that population, and, you know, listen, nobody, as we age, everybody wants to stay home, and we think that's important, but there's always going to be the need for these skilled providers, whether that's at the home and getting a home care service or in a setting like skilled nursing. We can't ignore them anymore. And what our customers are feeling like, and we see ourselves to sort of be an advocate for them, is that they've got to exchange the right insights, the right information to really make a difference. Not only just to keep the cost of care down, but to provide the best possible care you can.
And I think that's something that people forget is when we say home care doesn't mean ignored care.
It means
you're in
right.
the home.
That's
you still
exactly
need
right.
servers, you still need devices. And your company is obviously working towards bringing that into the fold.
That's correct. What we want to do is really kind of provide that whole view of what's happening during the episode, right? And everyone talks about coordinated care, in population health, as we talk about going from the hospital into the community. When we talk about coordinated care, it can't be so hard to find that information, right? We want to engage the external care team, not just the internal care team, right? And so the days of I'm going to discharge a patient to a SNF and then wash my hands of it, and while that allow our customers to take care of it only, it's not going to last. So they have to be integrated, allow them to do more with the data, and kind of drive it from there.
Awesome, amazing. So I've spent the last year learning more about long-term care and post-acute care, and it's been exciting. I've been surprised by a lot of things. I think you kind of talked about it. I was surprised to learn it's a much more electronic and modernized than I thought. I had that vision of clipboards and fax machines. What do you think, first of all, one question, do you still see that sort of challenge happening when you talk about long-term care, post-acute care with hospitals? And second, what have you found people think is most surprising about long-term care?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the market is certainly divided, right? I think you asked earlier too, what are some of the dynamics to drive it? Certainly, if you look at value-based care and changing in payments, or models as whether they're participating in bundles, or we see ACOs very active in understanding how do they manage that. We really see kind of two groups, right? One is saying, I'm using some data to help decide who my partners are, who do I send referrals to, and then others who are more kind of closely connected to say, how do we work? What I think they're most surprised about is that the first question says, can you accept CCDs? Can we send some transition? And we want to really try to push the conversation to more than just the CCD. How do we make it more actionable? And so I think that always pops up, hey, can you do that? Does that work? Are you guys able to use some of the standards that are out there? And so the answer is yes. And then I think the second one is just understanding, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the depth of actually what's happening electronically, right? We can't accept labs, we are passing meds, we do have analytics in place. And I think the last thing I'll add, Colin, is we have to challenge our LTPAC providers too. They have to be engaged with their partners. So the story always goes is that, it used to be, if you're a skilled nursing provider, you bring donuts to the admission coordinator every Friday. And that doesn't work anymore. It's not about, you got to bring data, right? Stop the donuts, bring the data.
Stop the donuts, bring the data.
Show how you're doing, and kind of take ownership at that drive.
Excellent. So BJ, if we sit down here same time next year at the next HIMSS, what do you hope will have happened? What do you hope we'll be talking about in terms of movement in the long-term care, post-acute care?
Well, I think for sure what we want to see happen is that we're excited to have our hospital systems partners and with their skilled nursing partners presenting on the stage to talk about talking about the outcomes that they drove, right? We think there's a real ROI, there's real possibilities. We want to use that to educate the rest of the market about what's possible. And I think hopefully what you and I will be talking about is how we're doing even more with the data, right? How do we get beyond just sharing information? How do we start sharing insights and to drive different types of behaviors?
Now, before we go, I want to make sure that the audience does know how to get a hold of you, or how to get through to the PointClickCare organization, so they can talk more or learn more about some of the things you're doing, especially about this developer network that you've created.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to our website at PointClickCare.com, we have all of the information listed, especially about the developer program. There's a whole area dedicated to that where third-party developers can get in, check it out, and use that. And of course, lastly, we set up a special account, HIMSS@PointClickCare.com, because we want to really kind of be direct, get it to the right person, and kind of make a difference. So.
Awesome. That's great. Well, BJ, we've shared so much information. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. This has been Colin Hung with HealthCareScene.com. Please check us out. And as you heard from my friend BJ here, stop bringing the donuts, bring the data.